Hello, fellow diamond painting addicts, and welcome back to Diamond Painting Anonymous. I'm Daphne, and I'm here today with this week's WIP and Chat. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. WIP, W-I-P, stands for Work in Progress, and this is mine. You are welcome and encouraged to go grab whatever you are working on and work alongside while I chat. Or alternatively, you can treat this as a podcast and just listen while I chat. Today, I'm going to be working on my literate dragon. I am behind. I have been very busy doing other things, not diamond painting related, and I need to make some progress on this one. So let me zoom in to where I'm going to be working, and I will be right back. All right, let me just jump in here to my regular life update. This one is going to be kind of a strange WIP and Chat, I think. I don't even have any notes today. So I'm just kind of winging it. So this may be a little bit even more rambly than usual. So I apologize. My train of thought is never linear on the best of days. So yeah, what's been going on in my regular life? It's been kind of a struggle. I think I mentioned to you guys before that I am not good at dealing with change. And I've had a whole lot of it here lately. Not unplanned, not unexpected, but still change that you need to deal with, right? Some of it is beyond our control, things that we've had to wait for, stuff like that. Things have started moving. I told you last time we'd finally gotten our driver's licenses. We got the registration for the new car that we purchased, but we still have other things that we are waiting on, and we, in the middle of all of this upheaval, have been searching for a place to live. We are currently in a rental, and we have the rental through the beginning of the summer, but by then we need to have located other housing. The housing market here is very much a seller's market at the moment. What little there is, because it's winter and it's not really prime house market time, which we thought would be a benefit to us, but hasn't turned out that way. It just, everything seems to go really quickly in our price range. If we had more of a budget, then we would have more options, but that's not how life works, right? I mean, if we all could just spend whatever we wanted to on housing, we'd all live in very nice houses, right? Plus, when we started looking, it was with the idea that we wanted to stay closer to the city center for various reasons, including that my husband might be gone working storms and such, and in an unfamiliar place, driving on unfamiliar Canadian roads in an unfamiliar Canadian winter, we wanted to be as close to some amenities as possible. However, as is often the case, we've discovered that we get more bang for our buck in real estate if we go a little afield of the city center. So that's what we've been doing. And I don't know, I'm still torn. I mean, my thinking, my reasoning behind staying close to the city center is still valid, but it just is not realistic that we're going to be able to afford housing. So, at least to purchase a house. We might be able to find a rental in the city center, but we would prefer to purchase something. So that means we have to look, like I said, a little further afield than the city center. So that's what we've been doing. Even doing that, however, it seems like as soon as a listing comes on the market, it's gone. And it's a little weird because here, the listings just stay out there. They're never marked with anything. Like when we were selling our home in the States, we initially had considered buying another smaller property in the States with the idea of maybe renting it out to my daughter, but still that way we could maintain a residence in the States. We ended up deciding against that. But anyway, my point is when you're looking for property in the States, if there is an offer or a contract pending, they mark that on the listing. So we were able to just skip over a bunch of listings going, well, that one's got a contract on it. So until the contract does or doesn't go through, there's no point in us even looking at the pictures of the property and possibly falling in love with something that isn't even available, right? Here, they don't do that. We would see a new listing pop up on the market and we would contact the realtor. Sometimes before there were even any showings on the houses would have a contract on them, which is fine. Kudos to people who managed to sell their house that quickly. I wish that had been us. But it's a bit frustrating on the other side of the coin that they don't even put that it has a contract pending, because we wouldn't have even bothered looking at it if we'd known that. And it's been interesting to see how it works here. In the US, you have title companies who do all the research for the title, that take care of the closing and getting all of the financing, if there is any, together, and figuring out how all of that's going to go. And then on the day of closing, you go to the title company, sign all the paperwork. If you're the seller, you get your check with your proceeds. If you're the buyer, you pay whatever money you're supposed to pay, whether that's through financing or cash or whatever it is. Here, apparently, instead of title companies, you go through a lawyer, which sounds like it's going to be way more expensive than a title company. I don't think it is, but we haven't got that far in the process yet. Of course, we need a home inspection on whatever we would want to purchase. We're not going to buy anything without having a home inspected. I guess up here, radon is a thing because we are close to the water, and I guess somehow that means that the underground radon can be more of an issue. It's not a huge deal to mitigate radon, but just something I've never had to worry about before. Our real estate agent did bring it up to us and basically just told us, get a fan, open the windows in your basement for a couple of weekends, and it should be fine. It takes a while to build up. It takes a while for the exposure to cause any issues, but still, just something we want to be aware of. So yeah, it's just been lots of learning experiences, lots of situations where I feel like I have no idea what's going on or what's expected of us, what we're supposed to do, that sort of thing. I'm still chafing a bit every time we get charged a monthly fee for our bank account here, which I know is just how people do business here. But again, I look at banks are making money off lending out the money that we put in the bank. So why am I paying them for the privilege again? It is what it is. We just have to get used to it, but still not my favorite thing to pay money for something that I don't feel like I'm getting any value for. Sort of like with the groceries and extra money being withheld above and beyond what they would be out for the groceries if we didn't show up to pick them up. We did actually go to a different grocery store this week, and we went inside to get our own groceries, and we managed to stick to our list. So that was good. If we could manage to do that on a regular basis, that would be extremely helpful. I'd say I would go with my son instead of my husband, but I don't know that my son would save me any money going that way either. He is very much like my husband sometimes in that it's like, oh, well, I want to try this. Oh, well, I want to try that. So yeah, it's just been kind of a busy week. I think we went and saw houses pretty much every day, sometimes just one or two, some days 3 or 4. But we did find one that we liked. We did find one we actually made an offer on. We actually found 2 that we liked, but one is pretty much turnkey, even though it's not really the size that I want. But it's turnkey. We wouldn't really have to do anything to it. We have options to expand if we want in the future. And the other one that we found was a lot more of a fixer-upper type. Not really a fixer-upper in that we'd have to do a bunch of things before we moved in. We could move in and be comfortable, but it was just very dated, and compared to the other one, just not what we wanted. The other one, my husband and I both walked into and thought, we could live here. It's closer to the water than I would like, but my husband would like to be close, so he's fine with that. Again, it's outside the city center, so further than I wanted to be, but again, that means we're getting more bang for our buck as far as housing dollars go. So everyone cross your fingers for me that the offer gets accepted. It would be nice to feel like we have our housing situation settled. And then once we have our housing situation settled and we're settled in someplace, we can start looking at everything else that we want to do. Some of that is down to me because we've been busy doing other things, like looking for a house. I've not had as much time to diamond paint as I wanted, so I'm falling a little bit behind in that regard. Tax time is looming, which is always a scary thing because we've never filed taxes here before. I don't really understand how all of it works. I don't understand all the forms, and we're hiring someone to do it for us, so I don't know that it's necessary that I understand everything, but turning over that control to someone else is also scary as well. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be scared necessarily. I think that's what I've realized over the last couple of weeks, is that it's not just me being resistant to change. It has also been me kind of frozen in fear in a lot of ways, which may sound dumb to some people, but I've lived with anxiety issues my whole life. I knew I would have them coming here, so it wasn't a surprise. But I think the severity of it has been a surprise, not just to me, but also to my husband. Honestly, I think some of it has to do with my thyroid issues. Thyroids are what regulate your hormones. My thyroid, although all the tests say that everything seems to be working okay, they don't know what's causing the cysts on my thyroid. Just, it's something to keep an eye on to make sure it doesn't get any worse, which is great. I'm happy that it's not anything more significant, don't get me wrong, but it's just one of those you feel like, or at least I feel like, what is going on with my body, right? Is there something actively going haywire? Because I can't seem to regulate myself, both physically and mentally, the way that I used to. It's a bit concerning. So my self-regulation seems to be not what it used to be, nor what my husband and I would like it to be. So we're doing the best we can. I'm doing the best I can to keep things on an even keel. It's actually been difficult because diamond painting was my therapy. And so sitting and diamond painting and just kind of being able to zen out was what I did to relax. And in the last few weeks, it has not been that for me, which has been part of my struggle with falling behind. Because instead of being a place that I could kind of find that zen and zone out, it instead turned into kind of a place where when I sat down, I had even more what it felt like focused free time to ruminate about all of the things that were worrying me and causing me that anxiety, which just made the anxiety even worse. And so it turned into me almost avoiding diamond painting for a little bit. I'm slowly getting back to the point where I'm finding a little bit of zen in it. I'm still not back to where I was, and that's okay. There have been a bunch of big life changes, and it's not like I haven't gone through something like this before. You know, there's that psychology scale of when major life changes happen and the psychological stress that that causes. I had a very stressful year many years ago. I lost my job, I lost my parents, I had moved several times. Things were very unsettled in my private life. It was a very difficult year. Did I get through it? Yep. Was it fun? Nope. Do I want to do it again? Nope. But here we are. And major life changes include things like my husband retiring. My understanding was that was going to be semi-permanent, that basically he would move back up here and then he would go back to work. That hasn't turned out to be the case yet, anyway. So that has been an adjustment, because that makes things a little bit more difficult when you're applying for things like home loans and all that kind of stuff when you don't really have any income nor a job. We're figuring things out, but it has made things more difficult than we thought they would be. My son finished college, so that feels like a big deal that I no longer have kids in college. We, of course, moved away from my daughter and the rest of my family, so that feels like a huge change. I lived within the same 60-mile radius pretty much my entire life, so that's a huge change, just getting used to the culture around here. I've decided I need to do some reading up on the culture of things and things like that, because I think I was never really encouraged to learn a lot about other people's cultures as a kid. I mean, of course, you do your social studies and your history and things like that, but really kind of delving deep into how things work in another country, I don't think is something most people do, unless, like me, you decide to move to another country. And I've done some research. I don't make it sound like I know nothing about Canada and didn't before we moved here, because that's not true. We visited here many times, visited my husband's parents and things like that, but that's not the same as living someplace, right? And I told my husband, in a lot of ways, it just feels like we're on an extended vacation. Even though we've moved here, we're in essentially a holiday rental, an off-season rental. We are not doing those routine everyday things, getting up and going to work and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's been some of it for me too. I, in my head, assumed that once we moved up here, things would go back to that sort of regular routine, and they haven't. So that has been different. And just navigating everyday life in someplace new is a bit different. And it would have been the same whether we were moving to another country or another state. We had talked a lot about possibly moving to Maine just to be closer for his folks. But what he really wanted was to be here. Again, I think I've just realized over the last couple of weeks that I have low-key been afraid, sometimes not low-key, but low-key afraid of everything, which sounds crazy to some people, I guess. But if you don't deal with anxiety on a regular basis, I mean, I had anxiety even in the States, living someplace that I was familiar with, that I understood how everything worked. I still had anxiety. I mean, I can remember driving to a track meet for my son and driving someplace that I was not familiar with and being very anxious about that. Even though I had GPS on my phone, even though I had a map with the directions to where I was going, just because it was going to be someplace unfamiliar was a cause of anxiety. So maybe I should have realized that I was going to have issues up here, but I didn't. I mean, I knew I'd have some, but I didn't realize they'd be as severe as they were. So again, we're figuring it out. I'm hoping that once we have our own place that we know we can be in permanently and is not someplace that we have to move, whether that's a more long-term rental or a house of our own, that maybe my anxiety will decrease a little bit. I don't know if that's true, but I'm crossing my fingers and telling myself that's what's going to happen. I did call and have a long talk with my sister the other day. That helped. She has always kind of been the voice of reason for me. She's my older sister, so I don't know if that has something to do with it, but she's much more logical in her approach about things than I am sometimes. Her husband and I laughingly joke that that's because he and I are Aquariuses and she isn't, that we just approach things differently. But talking to her and having her go, why are you worried about this? Just makes it easier to deal with sometimes. And I was also dealing with the fact that I felt like part of the issue was me feeling distant from family. I am trying to be good about keeping up with text messages and video chats and things like that. But they're busy with their own lives too, and so the response has not always been what I was expecting or hoping. Some days it felt like I was just screaming into the void, I would send these messages or short videos of what was going on and checking in with them, like when we had that big weather system hit and dump a bunch of snow on them back home. I wanted to make sure that everyone was safe and sound, and didn't really get a response, so that was a bit disheartening. And in talking it over with my husband, and he said, this isn't really any different than how it was when we were there. Again, they're busy with their own lives, and even when I was 20 minutes away, that was kind of how it was. We would see each other on holidays. Of course, I saw my sister way more often when we were working together at the preschool, but that had kind of faded since I had quit working there. So that was a bit of a revelation for me as well, that he's right. Here I am thinking feeling guilty, really, that they're upset because I'm gone, of course. And that's what it is, right? Making it all about you instead of looking at what's going on in their lives. I read someplace this last week that somebody's therapist said to them, nobody thinks about you more than you. So me attributing it to them actively avoiding me or them being angry with me or upset with me for moving away had nothing to do with it. They're just busy living their lives. It isn't any different than the response that I would have gotten had we still been in the States. I think maybe I was just optimistically hoping that maybe there would be more interaction because I want there to be, and that hasn't turned out to be true, which is okay, right? They're entitled to live their lives just like I'm entitled to live mine. I get it. It's still a bit hurtful and not what I was hoping for, but I can't change it. I can keep reaching out myself, which I'm going to keep doing. That is all I can do. I can't control other people, right? I did talk with my sister and mention that I would love for them to visit us. I would love to visit them, and how do we make that happen? She's convinced they just don't have enough time or money to visit us up here. But she did say that they would be willing to perhaps meet us halfway. So maybe if we both traveled to Chicago or something like that would be sort of a halfway point for both of us, which would be fine. But if hubby and I are going to make that trip, then I would also want to go see my daughter. I don't know that my daughter would have the finances or the time. She'd have the time in the summer, but I don't know if she'd have the finances to come meet us in Chicago for something like that. Although I suppose if she traveled with my sister, I don't think they would do that, though. I don't think that would be a comfortable trip for any of them. But so I don't know. Hubby and I are talking about in a few weeks, we'll have been here for 3 months. That's a quarter of a year, which seems insane to say that we've been here that long already. But we have. I would like to go back home and visit everybody. My plan was to try and go back once a quarter to see everybody back home, whether that was hubby and I, my son and I, all three of us, or just me, whether that meant flying, driving, whatever. Flying would be nicer because, of course, it's faster. We would basically probably do what we did when we were visiting up here, drive to Bangor and take flights from Bangor back home, and then get a rental car to drive around while we were there. But that means we have to pay for hotels and things while we're there. Flights are not super expensive, but they're not cheap either, and we'd have to pay for a hotel. There's nobody really that would have enough room. If it was just me, I might be able to stay with my daughter in her apartment, but if it's hubby and I, there's not enough room. Not enough room at my sister's place for both of us. So paying for hotels means it's more expensive than we would like it to be. I told my husband it would be nice if we could find a used RV for not very much money and pull it along behind so we could sleep in the RV and we wouldn't have to pay for hotels. Just possibly park somewhere in a parking lot in Boondock or rent out a RV campsite. There's actually an RV campsite not too far from where we used to live, so we'd be close to go visit everybody. But then you're paying for gas, and of course we'd have the initial outlay for the RV. So I don't know what we're going to do, but I definitely would like to make a visit back home. I need to wait and see what happens with our housing situation first. I really would like to have a more permanent option lined up before we spend money on flights and things. I don't want to wait too long though, because there's always a chance if we wait until too far in the summer that hubby ends up going storming, which would be good and bad. Good that he would be making some storm money because that would let us afford a flight and things like that. But bad in that he would be away, which would mean he wouldn't be able to do something like that. Of course, I suppose it depends on where he goes for the storm. If it was a hurricane in the States or something like that that he was working, then maybe it wouldn't be too difficult for him to hop a flight to Kansas and meet me there or something like that. I don't know. I told my husband I'm going to try and approach this as if we're just on vacation for a couple of years. He was telling me not too long ago about a guy that he worked with. I may have told you guys this, I don't remember. But basically, he's a lineman, this guy, just like my husband, and he works storms. So he spends a year or so going on a bunch of different storms and making a whole bunch of money that he banks. And then he spends a couple of years not working, traveling around, going where he wants, doing what he wants. And then when his money gets low, he goes back to work. He goes back to work storms for another year or so, saves up all his money again, rinse, repeat. And that's how he lives his life. He's not married, so he doesn't have a wife or kids or anything to consider. But so maybe, I don't know, in my head that makes it a little bit easier to be like that, but I don't know that it matters actually. I think he's figured out how he wants to live his life, and that's what he does. So I told my husband, I'm just gonna tell my brain we're on vacation for the next 2 years. We're not really, but that's what I'm telling myself. We've got enough savings and retirement that we're okay. We can't do this forever. We don't have that kind of money, but we'd be okay for a couple of years. Would it be fun, and would we have to pay more attention to our spending than we usually do? Yep. Yes, we'd have to pay more attention to our spending. No, it would not be fun, but it's certainly doable. And in the meantime, we do have enough that we could do some of the things that we wanted to do, explore around here. Because of that same fear, have been putting off starting that other channel that I wanted to. I've done so much of the groundwork. I've pretty much done everything but actually edit and upload and publish some videos, so I need to do that. I don't know if it was a fear of failure, a fear of change, both of those things. Kept telling myself I want to learn how to use this other editor because they will be different kinds of videos. It will involve more editing than I do for videos like this. So learning how to do some of the things that I would like to do, I kind of made a priority, but I just need to jump in and do it. It's that fear of whatever, whether it was fear of change, fear of failure, fear of not knowing everything, whatever it is, I just need to jump in and do it. That's how I started this channel, and look where it ended up. I never would have in a million years thought I would be where I am with this channel. So thank you to all of you who are watching and subscribing. If you're not subscribing, hit that subscribe button down below. So yeah, I think I've been putting off a lot of things. I've been kind of frozen. When I was working at the preschool, we were doing a lockdown drill, which seems crazy to think that you would need to do it at preschool, but we did. And after the security guy had left, it was an off-duty cop who kind of came through and walked us through scenarios and what we should do and where we should go, and if this happens, do this, if that happens, do that, that sort of thing. And we were talking about, one of the things he had mentioned was that people fall into fight or flight categories. And so we were discussing amongst ourselves what category we thought we would fall into, because to take advantage of people's things, like if you're someone your instinct is to flee, then maybe that would be the person we wanted to be in charge of trying to get the children out, if that's what we were doing. Did we want someone whose instinct was to fight? And what did that look like? And one of the ladies I worked with said, you guys are forgetting there's a third option. And we said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, that third option is me. When I'm confronted with those kinds of situations, I don't fight, I don't flee, I freeze. And I thought, oh, she's so right. Why didn't the trainer guy think to mention that to us? And she said, I've been in a situation, not like a life or death, in a situation where she realized that about herself, that her instinct was not to fight or to flee. She was just frozen in indecision. So she didn't want to be the person who had to make a decision about something, because she's like, I'll freeze up. I won't be able to make a good decision in that situation. And I think that's where I've been. I think I would have tagged myself as a flee person initially, but I think in this situation, whether that's going to be true for every situation or not, I don't know, but at least in this situation, I've realized that I've been frozen. and kind of stuck on, I describe it to my husband as being stuck on a hamster wheel, where your brain just goes around and around and around in circles, and you know your brain is going around and around in circles, but you can't make it get off the hamster wheel or the treadmill or whatever analogy you prefer. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to kind of put all of that fear aside and say, okay, we're on vacation. We're on a vacation in a beautiful place with lots of things to see and do that I've never done before, that I've never seen before. So what does that look like? What are hubby and I going to do? I've already talked to him about, let's take some day trips, things that we would be able to see that aren't very far from where we are, so we wouldn't necessarily have to spend the night someplace. We could if we wanted to, but trying to keep a mindful eye on our expenses. What does that look like? Where could we go? Things that I could film for the other channel, things that I could talk about. That's been something that's kind of kept me frozen as well in thinking about the other channel. What kind of things would people be interested in? What kind of things do I want to talk about? Locations and places that we could travel to, certainly. But what else would people be interested in? And if you have a thought about that, please leave me a comment below. I mean, I plan to cover things like us moving here, our actual journey, driving to get here with all of our stuff, crossing the border, getting used to new things here, like what my husband and I lovingly refer to as Monopoly money, because Canadian money is very bright and colorful compared to American currency. Getting used to things like how you buy your groceries here, buying gas, and I mean, those sound like very simple things, but they're just little things that are different. Going out to eat at a restaurant is a little bit different, those sort of things. So I do have ideas to talk about all of those things, but I need to sit down and figure out how do I tackle that in a video format so that I don't end up with a video that's 6 hours long that is interesting to no one about all the minutia, right? Sometimes the minutia is interesting, but most of the time it isn't. So just figuring out where to start with the channel. And obviously it would be a little bit of catch up at this point because we've been here for so long that I think maybe that was part of it too, was me giving myself time to maybe acclimate a little bit and figure out what is different. If we end up purchasing a house, then of course I will have information about how that situation and experience is different here than in the States. And I think too that I have wanted to be more settled someplace permanent, because there are things that I would like to do that just I'm not able to do in this temporary rental, just because of space wise. I mean, I don't know if these are things that would actually end up on the channel or not, but I love to bake. I watch a lot of like homestead type videos. I want to learn how to can and preserve those sort of things. I want to have room to have like a vegetable garden and be able to can things that we've produced, that sort of thing, which this house we've offered on would have, so that would be lovely if we could get that. But just like here in this rental, logistically, there is not enough counter space for me to do the things that I want to do because it's furnished, which is what we wanted and needed for the short term, but because it's furnished, there just isn't a lot of wiggle room. I could, I suppose, just move everything for a short while I did whatever it is I was going to do. Bake sourdough bread, whatever struck my fancy. But we've also been busy house hunting and doing other things, and so I just haven't. I feel like I disrupted the house enough with all of my diamond painting stuff that I don't want to have to reconfigure the entire house when we're ready to move out. And some of it is we just weren't able to do what we thought we would be able to anyway because of the situation with the staircase and not being able to fit things up the staircase like we had assumed we would be able to. But exciting things happening. Like I said, we have made an offer on a house, so fingers crossed. I debated whether I wanted to say anything because I didn't want to jinx myself, but any goodwill out in the universe right now would be appreciated. If we don't get it, then it wasn't meant to be, but hubby and I really like it, so we would like to have it if we're meant to. So I don't know if there's anything else. Oh my goodness, I spent so much time talking about my regular life. Well, I guess that makes sense because there hasn't been a ton going on in my diamond painting life because of all the things going on in my regular life. I am still working on Literate Dragon, as you can see, although I have made a promise to myself that I will make a concerted effort this week, because hopefully we won't have to be doing a lot of house hunting this week, that I will put in some significant hours on this to try and get it finished, because I definitely want to finish this before the end of January, because I have other projects I'd like to move on to. If you saw my previous videos, I opened up the Bubble Girl Little Mermaid kit that everybody really liked when I asked for opinions up after my stash video. So I would like to do that one. There is an event in February. I actually had plans to do an event in January. It just didn't work out. Like I said, I just wasn't putting in enough diamond painting hours, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get what I wanted done, so I just decided, okay, I'm going to take that off my plate. But I would like to do the Bella event for February, and I have plenty of Bella kits to choose from. So if you saw yesterday's video, that was me unboxing the butterfly kit that I intend to do for that Butterfly Wishes event. And that one is not very big. It's basically 40-ish by 40. I think it's like 37 by 40 is the actual dimensions. So 40 by 40 is what I'm going to call it. But it's round and there's quite a bit of multi-placing, so it should go pretty quick. And then I think after that, I might move on to one of my diamond dots partials. I don't have, those two diamond dots are the only two partials I have left. And because they're partials, they always go quick. So I might do those just to get those two done, because I would like to see some movement on my stash count, since that's one of my goals this year. And I did actually buy a kit that has arrived from a Canadian company. So that's something I would like to share with you guys. Probably not until next month, but I did go through as well. I watched a video about setting goals and how setting goals isn't enough. I've seen a lot of videos that say you shouldn't set goals, you should set systems, because the systems are the things that you do every day, and that's what lets you achieve your goals. And I just had never really sat down or had it presented in a way that made sense to me. And I watched a video and somebody was talking about approach it like a business, which I am not very business oriented. Numbers are not my thing. I've talked about that before. But basically they were like, approach it like a business. A business says, here's our goals for the year. We're going to break it down into quarters, because every quarter, most businesses have to make quarterly reports to shareholders and things like that. So it's a good gauge of, are you on track? Do you need to make changes? And I thought, okay, so let me go back to my diamond painting goals and break them down into quarters. So for instance, one of my goals was to complete the 4 spanglers that I have left in my stash. Well, I have 4 spanglers and there's 4 quarters. So when I made that goal, I was actually thinking to myself, do I just go spangler, spangler, spangler to get them done, and then that goal is met and out of the way? Which is certainly an option, and I could do it that way. But I knew if I tried to do it that way, that I was going to be a pretty good way to burn myself out on doing them, which is not what I wanted to do. My spanglers are all older, except for one of them. All of them, I think, are squares, except for one of them. Because they're older Diamond Art Club kits, the drills are just gappier and not as nice as the kits with the newer drills. So it just gets to be a little bit more frustrating and just not as nice an experience as working on the newer kits. So I thought to myself, okay, I've got 4 spanglers, there's 4 quarters. I'll do a spangler a quarter. That means I can space them out. I won't get burnt out on working something that is kind of gappy and not the greatest experience. Still enjoyable, but just not as good as some of the newer kits, right? That lets me meet my goal by the end of the year, and I don't have to stress during the year, oh my gosh, am I falling behind? Did I consider doing this one? I've got goalposts for the year, and I'm good to go. And I kind of went through and did the same things for the rest of my diamond painting goals. if I want to lower my stash by X amount, how many does that mean that I need to do per month, right? I want to get 1,000 diamond painting hours in, so per quarter I need to do 250. That's easy math, right? Even for me. So yeah, it just kind of clicked for me. So hopefully that will make it easier for me to not only make my diamond painting goals this year, but to make some of my personal goals and also some of the goals that I'm going to be setting for the other channel. So sometimes maybe just, again, getting out of that being frozen with fear state, kind of at the same time reframing my perspective instead of looking at everything as a yearly goal, because a year is a long time and it's easy to tell yourself, oh, I'll get to that next week, tomorrow, next month, whatever the case may be. And then at the end of the year, you're scrambling because you're behind. So that's the plan anyway. Don't know if it'll make a difference, but I hope that it will. Hope it'll let me be a little less anxious about things and find that zen, because I have missed diamond painting, not just because of the channel, but because I truly enjoy this as a hobby. And so kind of having it feel like someplace that gives me anxiety rather than someplace that alleviates my anxiety has been frustrating. So hopefully I'm over that hump now, which means things in my diamond painting life should pick up. So next week I will have more diamond painting things to share, I hope. We'll see how that goes for me. I have never been a rose-colored glasses optimistic kind of person. My mother was a worrier. I'm a worrier. My sister is a worrier. That's just in our genetics, I think, or at least became a part of our personalities because that's how we were raised. My husband is very much not that, so even though we drive each other crazy sometimes, it's nice to have someone go, it's not going to be as bad as you think. To which, of course, I reply, that's because I've prepared us for the worst, right? So when it's not the worst, it's all good. All right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else in my diamond painting life that I need to share at the moment. I don't think so. Like I said, I've got those 2 kits that I'm going to be working on after I finish this one, but I got to finish this one first. So that's where I'm going to concentrate this week. There should be lots of football this weekend, so that's always some prime diamond painting time for me when everybody's watching football. So we'll see how far I get. For the time that I've worked on it, this kit has actually gone pretty quickly, kind of gappy drills aside. It's not as much multi-placing as I thought maybe it would be. I mean, I thought there would be some confetti, I knew, with all the books and everything, but there has been some nice multi-placing in sections. It's progressed a little bit faster than I would have anticipated, which means if I just get some actual good diamond painting time in, it shouldn't be too long before I finish it. I don't know at this point if I'm going to finish it before the end of January. I would like to think so, but I don't know. I think in the back of my head, I'm thinking if we find a house and purchase a house, then we'll be moving, but we won't be moving immediately. So I have time to be where I am and finish some things. But also we'd like to do a little bit of traveling, even if it's just some day trips, so that I have things that I can share on the other YouTube channel I want to do. So, and I have enough hours in the day. I just need to be a bit more disciplined with my time. But it does feel a bit like we're on vacation, and so it's easy to just say, I'll do it tomorrow, 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 tomorrow. 3 months later, I'm still sitting here. I've got to get into a routine. I think I was telling myself to wait until I could get back into my regular routine. Well, that's not going to happen because I'm not where I regularly was, right? Life is not going to be the same, which means my routines need to change as well. But I do need them. That does help keep me on an even keel, and I think that's been part of it as well. So I finished off that last section. I've made some changes with the amount of ABs that I'm adding in. For instance, the previous section that I was doing over here, I had an AB for the red that I was going to add in, but it's the red that goes on the chair, and it just looked a little strange to have it be ABs. So I will use it in other places where it appears as an AB, but not on the chair, things like that. Stuff that you don't know until you start working on it and you're like, do I like that? Nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it this way instead. Lots of things going on in my personal life, which meant my diamond painting life was kind of put on hold. So for those of you who are here for the diamond painting stuff, I apologize. My personal life kind of took things over. Those of you who are here for all the tea, I had lots of it today. So you can see over here where this little footstool is that he's kind of resting his feet on, the little ottoman. I initially had planned to put in some ABs and some of these dark reds and just decided, no, I'm not going to do that in the darker places. I'll use it in other places where it shows up. So on a lot of the books where things are scattered and it's like ABs go on the spines of the books and stuff like that. So if you're someone who likes to add in bling, don't be afraid to change things on the fly if you don't know if you're going to like how it turns out, or if you put it on and you're like, I don't like that. All right, I think that's it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end of the video and my absolutely rambling stream of consciousness thought here. I super appreciate it. Before you leave, don't forget to do all the things. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification icon so that you can be informed of future uploads. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching.